Hi there, I'm Jamie. Welcome to another session of Vistex 4 Services. In this first of full series, I'll be taking you through the amazing process of lighting, shading, texturing and rendering this detailed exterior scene. I have more than 10 years of experience in industry and published several popular books on the subjects of V-Ray, Mental Ray and 3D visualization. To follow this tutorial, you'll need textures and the 3ds Max files. These files and the full video are free for my Patreon supporters, or $10 to purchase. To contact me, please email me on jamiecardo@hotmail.com, or you can visit my blog by simply googling Jamie Cardoso. Hi there, I'm Jamie. Welcome to my new tutorial on how to turn any 3D exterior scene into a photorealistic render. Throughout this tutorial, we will focus on lighting, shading, texturing and rendering realistically. The shadows, 3D assets, model details and the camera composition are some of the main contributing factors in making an exterior render look more realistic. It's also worth mentioning that in any daylight render, the sun outside and the overall environment should always be brighter than any interior or objects in the shadow. So without further ado, we're just going to start by creating the first camera. So we just go into cameras there, physical camera, and let's just drag to create it. We're going to go into the modify panel there and then untick the targeted. A camera without a target will allow you to move freely without being constrained by its target. Also, let's go to the Customize tab and choose the Unit Setup option. For now, let's choose the meters metric system display. I often switch between millimeters and meters depending on the values I need to type in. If the values I need to type in are too small, I choose millimeters. Otherwise, I'd normally just use the meters display unit. I always try to make the camera at the eye level because that's a little bit more realistic. To ensure the camera is at the right level, I'll create a tape object and set its length to about 1.64 meters. 1.64 meters is the average height of most people's eyes. Select the ground and isolate. A quick way to select the same set of objects in the scene is to create selection sets. Simply type in the name of your selection set and click Enter to save it. In future, if you want the same selection set of objects, you can simply choose it from the pre-saved selection sets. After tweaking with the camera position, we're going to open the render setup and change the render output size. To make the framing of the scene more appealing, let's change the width to 3500 pixels and the height to 1750 pixels and lock it as the starting point. After fiddling with the camera slightly, this is the position that we ended up with. Next, we're going to open the render setup dialog and reduce the output size for test renders. Also, we're going to load up the V-Ray renderer by opening the Common tab, scrolling down, under the Assign Renderer, click on the production toggle and choose the V-Ray renderer from the list. Okay. So we're just going to go through some of its basic settings. In the V-Ray tab, under the image sampler parameters, choose the bucket type. I normally choose the bucket type because it allows me to see the buckets being rendered in a frame buffer. Always click twice on that default toggle in order to bring up all the expert settings. Go into the image filter there. By default, it's set to V-Ray Lanxess filter. I would normally just go to area, that's just the standard, but obviously you can choose any of the other filters there. In here, we're just going to leave it as it is for the time being. Go to the GI, and under GI, the primary engine you're going to change it to Radiance Map, and the secondary one Light Cache. Again, we're just going to click twice to bring up the export mode, which will give you all these extra settings here. Enable the ambient occlusion. The ambient occlusion is key in adding connecting shadows to objects, even when these shadows are directly lit, because without the connecting shadows the renders might look slightly flat. So by default the radius is set to 100 millimeters, which is 0.1, again because the units is set to meters. So in here you can actually change it just as a display there. So in here, instead of radius being 100 millimeters, you can go to 300 millimeters there. So these are the instances when I actually need to change the units display from meters to millimeters, because in here obviously I need to type in some really small values. The radiance map by default is set to really high. Just going to change it to I'm going to low again because we're doing some test renders. Go to Light Cache. Because this is an exterior scene, I don't think we'll need anything above 1,000 subdivisions there under Light Cache. So we leave it as 1,000. You know, maybe we can go to 800 to start with. There. And everything else seems okay as a starting point. Before we create the sunlight, we're going to make sure that all 4 viewports are in display, because then you'll be able to just see how the light is being created. So you go into the lights panels there, click on the photometric, choose the V-Ray. Under the V-Ray object type, choose the V-Ray sun and bring it in. You should be prompted with this V-Ray sun dialog. You just click yes. Right click to exit the creation. In here you just start moving the sun up. Another thing that we're going to do, open the render setup there, and we're going to lock the camera viewport here. Select the camera, come here and lock it. This means that even if that viewport is enabled or that one, this is the one that was always going to be rendered at all times. So you can just do a quick test render there. The white colors seem a bit too overexposed. To rectify this, we're going to open the V-Ray tab and scroll down to the color mapping parameters. By default, the color mapping type is set to rain hard, so we're going to change that to exponential. The exponential color mapping balances the highlighted areas more evenly than the other color mapping types. Enable the subpixel mapping and do another test render. As you can see, the highlighted areas are a bit more even now. Next, we're going to adjust the shadows to complement the building and make the foreground more interesting. We're just going to restrict the selection to lights. And the reason why we're restricting the selection to lights is because we don't want to select any geometry by mistake. So we're just going to change it, and also to lower the V-Ray sunlight there. Let's do another test render. As you can see, there are a lot more shadows defining the building. So now we want some shadows in the foreground. Having shadows in the foreground will contribute a great deal in making the overall render look more realistic. We can start by positioning objects in a way that shadows will be cast onto the roads. So we just brought in some trees there in the foreground. Some of these trees are set not to be visible to the camera. To enable that, you simply click on the objects, right click, under properties, you just set it not to be visible to the camera. Let's do another test render. The shadows are looking so much better now, and they're improving the overall composition and contrast. The foreground is a little bit busy with shadows, and you can actually see the shadows from the roof and that area there. A lot of detail there. Even though this is an external scene, one can see a lot of details that will complement the entire scene. The next step is to start adding more details in 3D assets such as trees, houses, leaves, cars and lampposts to make the overall scene more believable and realistic. These 3D assets can be modeled from existing drawings or from websites such as Evermotion or 3D Sky. To create curbs, companies often use plugins such as RailClone from i2 website. It allows you to create very quickly and easily things that will take a little bit of time to create. Like for instance, if you wanted that particular curve there, I select the ground and open the modifier. Enable the editable poly and click on the edge selection. Then you can create a shape from the selection. You go into linear. Select the shape. We can easily just go into the modifier and use a modifier called sweep. Let's say you wanted that curve to have this particular shape. You just increase its values. With RailClone, the entire process would have been much quicker because RailClone will actually allow you to, just with a spline such as this, you'll create the curve and the textures and everything else automatically. Also for trees and litter and leaves on the ground, you can easily create it with Forest Pack. The Forest Pack also allows you to create patches of grass, trees and many types of environment assets. So the next thing that we're going to do, we're just going to add some curbs there and some cars. So now we're going to start with the first material, the glass. Open the material editor. So you're going to call this material glass. Click on the standard toggle, open the V-Ray rollout and select the V-Ray material and just assign it to the glass. I hope you like what you've seen so far. You can have the full video with the 3D scene and textures for $10, or you can join my Patreon page to have this content and much more every month.